Namaste. In this third episode, I have talked about Rahu Mahadasha, how Rahu is connected with Maya, illusion, and I also talked about Rahu's position when it gets exalted and when it gets depleted, what it means. And there are many more deep insights in this episode. So let's begin with this third episode.
One of the things I was going to ask you was, you say in your book that whatever Rahu brings, Rahu takes away. That's one of the phrases that you use.
Yes.
What does that mean? Yeah.
Because Rahu is Maya. Rahu is illusion. So illusion doesn't stay for long. A time comes during Rahu Mahadasha where people have got a lot of fame and lot of money. By the time Rahu Mahadasha ends, they have lost everything.
Mhm.
So this is just a bubble. Rahu result is just like a bubble. It stays for just a limited time frame, after which you are again back to zero.
Mhm. And so your advice for people in this dasha is always, according to your book, to don't get attached to whatever Rahu gives them.
Yes.
So that's the basic advice for people in Rahu dasha. Just don't get attached to anything you get.
Yes.
Mhm.
Because the nature of Rahu is clinging. And during Rahu Mahadasha, when you receive all this money and fame, then you slowly move away from yourself. You become totally extrovert. Your whole attention is on what is happening outside. So this whole 18 years of Rahu Mahadasha, let's say even if you earn money and fame, still you have become spiritually poor. And in the end, what happens? Whatever you have gained, even that goes away.
Mm.
So then you become totally beggar from outside and at the same from inside. Because 18 years of Rahu Mahadasha, you never paid attention of turning inwards. Because you are lost in all that glamour.
Mm.
And that glamour doesn't stay for long. I have seen people who have had so many people around them with cameras. As soon as Rahu Mahadasha ended, everything went away. They lost their job. They lost their position.
Mm.
So this is how Rahu Mahadasha actually, traps you in this whole illusion where you are totally at loss. So a person who says that I have gained a lot of money in Rahu Mahadasha, in reality, he has actually lost that precious time of turning inwards, understanding himself, introspection. All this thing is lost. And the money that he has gained, that also someday goes away.
Mm. So do you think it's possible for someone with living the Rahu Mahadasha to learn, for example, Vedic astrology and all these concepts? Is it because that is something very interesting that you say as well. You say that Rahu is being obsessed with intellectualism and Ketu is more driven towards intelligence. And I thought it was quite a very succinct, essential difference. So I guess when I read that, I assume that people who is in Rahu Mahadasha and is learning astrology, they may learn it from other perspective, more intellectually, maybe more superficially, maybe, or with maybe an objective in mind. Meanwhile, people who is in Ketu Mahadasha understand and assimilate profoundly the concepts.
Yes. To self-realize, he or she will learn when going through Ketu Mahadasha.
Is there anything that someone in Rahu Mahadasha can do to understand astrology deeply, even if they are in Rahu time, Rahu transit, for example?
Yes, astrology can definitely help when you are going through Rahu Mahadasha, especially when you are learning astrology while going through Rahu Mahadasha. Definitely it can help because you understand where exactly you are going wrong, what exactly you should be doing and what you should not be doing.
So
Many times
astrology helps.
Yes, many times what happens is that during Rahu Dasha or during certain Rahu transits, there are certain temptations. So many times the awareness of the person is there, but still that temptation drives him or her.
Mm-hmm.
When you learn astrology, you understand that why you are getting tempted, why this temptation is coming. You get a reason. And the human mind is such that once you find some reason, then you start feeling lighter. You start feeling better.
Yeah. Do you agree with the people who say is that Rahu is the Kaka of astrology?
Is what?
Is the Kaka of astrology, the significator of astrology, that Rahu rules astrology? Do you agree with that?
No, not at all. For the simple reason.
Go ahead.
For the simple reason is because astrology is the light of consciousness. Jyotish. Right? It is a jyot. Light of self. Self-awareness. That is what astrology is. So you tell me, how can Rahu be connected with astrology when Rahu is total darkness? Rahu is total ignorance. Astrology is the source of light. It is the sun. If you say sun is related with astrology, I can understand. But Rahu is darkness. How can darkness signify? Or as you are saying, what you are saying, Karakattva. How can Rahu signify astrology? That is not possible. This statement that Rahu signify astrology is done by Rahuish people.
I have seen so many articles and actually people asking me, like, do you believe that? And I'm like, well, Jyotish is the science of light, and Jyotish is ruled by the sun, and the sun is the enemy of Rahu. How can we?
Yes.
Correct. How can we say that Rahu rules Jyotish? And another thing that I was going to ask you is, do you believe? So basically, again, I'm inviting you to my channel to talk about this because we are kind of clarifying many misconceptions that I see around, and I think you are the person to go to. And another misconception that I have seen around is the exaltation and debilitation of Rahu. Can you talk to us about what signs are the exaltation of Rahu, and if you believe that Rahu has exaltation or not?
Exaltation of Rahu, I believe, is in the sign of Gemini. And exaltation of Ketu is in the sign of Sagittarius.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The sign of Gemini is the sign of Mercury. Mercury is completely connected with intellectualism. And the other side, that is in Sagittarius, it is Jupiter. So there is no intellectuality, there is intelligence. Now, what is intelligence? Intelligence is when the heart is in tune with the mind.
Mm-hmm.
That is when intelligence is born. Whereas intellectualism is totally logic. There is no role of heart in intellectualism. That is why Albert Einstein has mentioned that logic can take you from A to Z. But beyond Z, it is only imagination that can take. So basically, logic, eventually what happens? Logic locks you. You start suffocating because we are totally into our head. Even when it comes to astrology, if you are completely only focusing on the calculations, then you will not find the essence of the subject.
Okay.
So unless heart comes into the picture, unless you start listening to the voice of your heart, the essence of astrology cannot be realized. My emphasis is on that don't just rely on the scriptures. Don't just rely on what has been written about certain yoga or certain conjunctions. See the facts through your own experiences.
Now that you say that, I wanted to ask you something. When you say see the facts from your own experience, do you think that Rahu has to do with imitation, stealing someone's work, for example, and not assimilating the concepts by yourself? Because, you know, I believe that Ketu has to do a lot with our past talents and how we access to our inner knowledge, that Ketu. But when we are not accessing to our inner knowledge, but we are kind of imitating people, copying people, stealing others' work. Well, I know stealing has to do with Rahu, but do you believe that copying people has to do with Rahu? Copying people's work?
Anything that is not ethical comes under Rahu. Because the whole story of Rahu, as per the mythology, is that Rahu took the, Rahu sat in with the Devatas. He basically, he was a Asura, but he tried to show himself as a Sura, that is a Devata. So that nature itself is of Rahu. So whether it is stealing, copying, or whether it is, faking, all these things obviously comes under the regime of Rahu.
Okay, so the karma with copying, when someone copy us, has to do with Rahu as well. When someone get our work. And I just ask you because, you know, this is happening a lot, and I understand that technology is Rahu as well. You know, technology has to do with Rahu. And when you have all your work, you know, you have your electronic and your ebooks out there, you have a podcast, you work with these platforms, and probably you have some experiences as well about this, people stealing your work or taking your ideas. Do you think that has to do as well with our karma with Rahu?
Yes. But as they say that somebody can copy you, let's take example. Somebody can copy you, but the source through which you are getting the ideas, that nobody can take away from you. You see?
You're totally right. That's right.
Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha.